this afternoon, it's a big diplomatic moment for the country as foreign delegates are in the national capital at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, which is underway as we speak. In fact, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart also held the first meeting since the Galwan clashes. So, of course, a big meet there which has happened between the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and the Chinese counterpart. Earlier, remember, Prime Minister Modi in his video message as well called for consensus on global challenges and said that the multilateralism is in crisis. So as we speak, the G20 meeting, which is underway, and of course a very crucial meet to have happened, which is of External Minister S. Jaishankar and the Chinese counterpart. Not just that, a bilateral that was also held between Antony Blinken and Jaishankar as well. So visuals are on your screens from inside the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, which is taking place in the national capital under India's presidency. Remember, representatives of 40 countries, including non-G20 members, have been invited by India, and multilateral organizations will attend. So Prime Minister there also in his video message made a statement calling for consensus on the global challenges that the economies across the globe are facing. In fact, let's listen into what Jaishankar had to say just a short while ago on the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting.
I thank the Prime Minister for his valuable guidance. I now begin the first session of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. As I do so, Excellencies, let us remind ourselves that this grouping bears an exceptional responsibility. We first came together in the midst of a global crisis and are today, once again, actually confronting multiple ones. These include the impact of the COVID pandemic, concerns of fragile supply chains, the knock-on effects of ongoing conflicts, anxiety of debt crisis, and the disruption of climate events. In considering these issues, we may not always be of one mind. In fact, there are some matters of sharp differences of opinions and views. Yet, we must find common ground and provide direction, because that is what the world expects of us. Colleagues, as we look ahead, there are both pressing and more systemic challenges that we all confront. The future of multilateralism depends very much on our ability to strengthen it in a changing world. Food and energy security are immediate anxieties magnified by recent events. But they do have long-term repercussions and solutions. And development cooperation is part of that larger solution that we are deliberating upon today. Colleagues, the current global architecture is in its 8th decade. The number of members of the United Nations has quadrupled in this period. It neither reflects today's politics, economics, demographics, or aspirations. Since 2005, we have heard sentiments for reform being expressed at the highest level. But as we all know, these have not materialized. The reasons are no secret either. The longer we put it off, the more the credibility of multilateralism stands eroded. Global decision-making must be democratized if it has to have a future. Our agenda for today's discussions include the challenges of food, fertilizer, and fuel security. These are truly make or break issues for developing countries. We heard their concerns directly in January this year through the Voice of Global South Summit. Such issues should not be relegated to the periphery of the international discourse. They are, in fact, crucial to the global economy and must be treated as such. Indeed, we urge that they be central to any decision-making. Along with that, the world must also strive for more reliable and resilient supply chains, Recent experience has underlined the risks of being dependent on limited geographies. Excellencies, all of us, individually and collectively, have an obligation to contribute to international growth and prosperity. They are implemented through sustainable partnerships and goodwill initiatives. On its part, India has undertaken development projects in 78 countries and has actively encouraged exchanges and capability building. During the COVID pandemic, we made a conscious effort at contributing to global solutions, even while looking after our own. Today's situation demands that we continue to live up to our international responsibilities. The G20 must be sensitive to the priorities and economic concerns of all our partners, especially those more vulnerable. We must ensure
Shri Sanjay Verma, Secretary West in the Ministry of External Affairs, as well as Joint Secretary Europe West in the Ministry, Shri Sandeep Chakravarti. Sir, may I hand over the floor to you?
Thank you very much. Secretary West, Sanjay Verma, Sandeep, friends from the media, thank you very much for coming here this afternoon for this special briefing on the ongoing visit of Italian Prime Minister to India. I'll just make some brief opening remarks and would be happy to take questions thereafter. At the invitation of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, Her Excellency Ms. Giorgia Meloni, President of the Council of Ministers of the Italian Republic, is currently on her first state visit to India. Prime Minister of Italy is accompanied by Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister His Excellency Antonio Tajani and a high-powered business delegation. This is the first bilateral VVIP visit from Italy to India after a gap of 5 years. As you are aware, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Modi and Prime Minister of Italy had held extensive and productive discussions on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia in November last year. In terms of program, Prime Minister of Italy arrived earlier today morning, was accorded a ceremonial welcome at the forecourt ceremony in the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and has just concluded her official talks with the Honorable Prime Minister, both in the restricted format and also in the delegation level format. She also paid her tributes to Mahatma Gandhi at the Rajghat, and thereafter Honorable Prime Minister hosted the Prime Minister of Italy a luncheon at the Hyderabad House. Later during the day, Prime Minister of Italy will also call on Honorable Rashtrapati ji. Prime Minister Meloni will also participate in the 8th Raisina Dialogue as the chief guest and keynote speaker alongside Prime Minister Modi later this evening. In terms of the substance of discussions and the decisions that and the understanding that the two leaders arrived at, I will just make some broad brush 8 to 10 points which were key takeaways from this meeting. First of all, both the leaders agreed and decided to elevate India-Italy partnership to the level of strategic partnership. As per Italian Prime Minister herself, her visit to India was a matter of strategic choice. The fact that she decided to undertake the first bilateral visit in Asia to India was a strategic choice and not just a routine bilateral visit. 3, Prime Minister of Italy appreciated the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister on matters of regional and global importance, in particular when it comes to concerns, interests and priorities of the global south. 4, the discussions covered the entire gamut of bilateral, regional and global cooperation. 5, and I must mention this important point, both the leaders held discussions in a very warm, cordial, friendly, frank atmosphere between the two leaders. A strong bond of friendship between the two leaders was very, very clearly visible during the discussions. 5, in terms of areas of importance which were discussed, on which important decisions have been taken in terms of next steps. First is the area of defense cooperation. The memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation has been concluded. In terms of subsectors within the defense, it was clear during the discussion that with legacy issues behind us, the door is now open for the industries on the two sides to cooperate more strongly in this area, particularly in the field of manufacturing, co-production, co-design, co-innovation. 2, military exercises to be expanded and deepened to all levels in the armed forces. 3, maritime cooperation, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when we come to specific areas of maritime cooperation a little later. The 6th element which they discussed, again an important element of our strategic partnership besides the defense, was need for deepened cooperation in the field of space, cyber and sea as 3 of the key strategic sectors in our cooperation. Work will now begin between the two sides to identify specific areas of partnership in each of these domains and of course their subsectors. Another element of cooperation which was identified for progress is HADR cooperation, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and within that especially the need for joint exercises, greater number of joint exercises to better prepare our systems to respond to such challenges wherever they occur in the world. 8th, the broader segment of economic cooperation, the focus was on 4 or 5 key subsectors. First, on trade. As you would have seen and heard the two Prime Ministers speak during their remarks to the press, bilateral trade volumes between India and Italy are at all-time high. Last year I think they clocked $15 billion. Growing investment between the two economies. Prime Minister underlined to the Italian Prime Minister the scale, the extent and the range of opportunity that exists in the Indian economic ecosystem for the Italian.
So briefing there by the Foreign Secretary on the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, the 2-day Foreign Ministers meeting which is underway in the national capital, but simultaneously the visuals there on your screens right now of the bilateral which is taking place between India and China as we speak. Remains to be seen the issues that are discussed, especially in relation to the friction points at the LAC. Slip into a very short break.